How's my lighting? How's
Oh,
my lighting?
okay. So welcome everybody. I'm here with Andrea Michelle, my Sky Astrology Conference partner, and it's just after the recent Hunter's Moon. I don't know.
Oh,
Did you know that the recent moon? Yeah. And the
perfect.
reason why is the equinox moon is called the harvest moon because, it's that time of year. And then after the harvest was in, the men were finished with the farm work, they'd go out and get them some meat for the winter.
Wow,
And so it became known as a hunter's moon for that reason.
beautiful.
And, I've been hunting. I was shooting varmints and working in the fields before I was ever in school. That's how
Mm,
redneck I am.
mm, love it.
And so, and so as you've been through the process of your professional development, your personal development, I mean, I dare say actualization, although some people maybe that's not the word they like. I've noticed you getting more and more in touch with instinctual ways of being. I mean, we were talking about, I guess it was a year or so ago, you were interested in hanging out with the Bushmen
Yeah.
in Africa, maybe like learning how to track, and then more recently, you've started working with equine therapy.
Mm,
Um, and for me, it's interesting because I don't know if I say this enough, but being a nature boy, farm boy, and growing up, hunting and fishing and farming and all that, um, that was actually my doorway into the magical New Age spiritual realm, if you will, is that I ended up in at Virginia Tech on scholarship, and I was studying architecture because my father was in the building trades, and it was like the sort of artsiest thing I could imagine for myself at the time. And I started having dreams where the crows were talking to me. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that's not exactly what you would call normal. Like, what the heck is going on here? And I ended up getting a pack of cards. It's called what is it called? Animal cards or medicine cards by Jamie Sams.
mm.
And she's like a Native American teacher. And, it was sort of like, totem animals or whatever you want to call it, right? There's like a book and a set of cards that goes with it. And that was kind of because I mean, I grew up Southern Baptist, but I hadn't gone to church in years. I didn't have really any way of framing. And so sort of, well, what the hell does talking to a crow in a dream mean anyway, And it kind of gave me a doorway back, and I started like going in, like doing a lot more. There's a caving club there in Virginia Tech, and I started hanging out down by the river, and I started remembering, oh my God, because I was miserable, if I'm honest, I was miserable in academia. It was killing me. And slowly as I got back in touch with with my affinity for nature, I started to realize like I got to get out. This is killing me. I got to get out. And I, only thing I knew is that I wanted to find or to reconnect, refind, relocate the magic in the world. Like I felt like that's something I can't live without, And so, um, and then fast forward however many years, I ended up having a dream where I saw celestial alignments and I became an astrologer. But underneath that has always been like this deep connection and then I meet Adam and you and we're doing the Sky Astrology Conference thing, which I mean, I think it's kind of sounds stupid when I say it, but I think maybe sometimes we forget the sky is nature too, right?
Right. Yeah.
it's nature. Being out stargazing is a natural experience. It's one of the most natural experiences a human being can have,
Hmm.
you know? And it reminds me of the Orphic saying. In the Orphic tradition, they would actually have little tablets of gold or sometimes scrolls that they would put in the mouth of the mummy or whatever, and it said on there something to the effect of, I am a child of the earth and the starlit sky."
Yeah.
So this idea that we have a starry nature and an earthy nature, it's kind of hermetic in a way, above and below. Um, but yeah, they're still both like that's who we are, you know? And and so I just thought it would be really cool to have a discussion about that, about like where does how does this how does this idea of us as natural beings, as beings who are part of nature, not separate from it.
Hmm.
How does that even work nowadays? And what does it look and feel like? And what the hell does it have to do with astrology? And where might, what paths might it lead down, and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
So I guess with that said, with a little bit of my background, open it up to you and kind of share with people your journey of late, anyways.
Hmm.
How you kind of got, down some of these roads into, I mean, I guess we'll call it your instinctual self or your animal self or,
Yeah. It's like, I call it the indigenous self.
mm,
The indigenous meaning
nice.
no longer located in a specific place, but belonging to oneself, like indigenous to oneself as the vessel, the vehicle, the like everything is complete within the human being,
Mm,
as long as the human being is remembers its connection with the web of all life.
right.
Because
So
it feels
indigenous
like,
to Earth.
yes, exactly. That's it. And by
Earthlings.
virtue, yeah, and by virtue of being indigenous to Earth, we are it enhances our relationship with the sky. It can
Mm,
only enhance our relationship because of the correspondence of above and below, I mean,
mm,
so it's yeah, I've always appreciated that about you, Gary. You have a, you jokingly call yourself a redneck, but it's like you're someone who's been immersed in the land and I've only known you to be reverential and respectful of the earth. And when I hear you speak about hunting and your experiences that you've shared with me about encountering animals in the wild and the mutual respect that happens when we treat the
yeah.
other as its own sentient life and its with its own desire to life and to experience honestly the joy of being alive. And I say
Mm,
joy very specifically because joy is not just a human, it's not an emotion for one thing.
mm,
From the little or what I've been experiencing so far of it, joy is the fabric of life itself.
mm,
Joy and generosity is inherent in the matrix of being an earth being.
mm,
But because we're so caught up in seeking and the looking outside of ourselves, which has become the malaise of our species for some
mm,
time, we're seeking for what's already right here. And if we dare to slow down enough, if we dare to humble ourselves enough to recognize first how isolated we've become and let the grief around that's going to be a natural part of the reconnection happen, then we are reestablishing ourselves as part of this
mm,
matrix. And my journey is, I mean, it started at various intervals. But the very first experience I had, other than a psychic telling me, kind of almost as like a throwaway, he's like, "What is your relationship with horses?" Years ago, like 15 years ago, and I was like, I don't have one," right? And I wasn't ready at the time, but it planted a seed.
Mm.
I remembered it. I forgot it for a decade or more, but it came back around. But my very first experience was with Animas Valley Institute. I don't know if you know who that is, or Bill Plotkin started.
Mm.
He wrote a book called Nature and the Human Psyche, Soulcraft.
I know
Um,
I've heard about Soulcraft, yeah.
yeah, and he,
Those are kind of like Vision Quest experiences.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's part of that can be exactly.
yeah. Yeah, I've
But
done a
it's
few of those.
I bet, yeah. Or for me, urban girl, I went to my first one of there. It was called Cultivating a Psyche the Size of the Earth, and it was in Wyoming, outside of
Interesting. It
Jackson
reminds me of
Hole.
Dane Rudhyar's book, The Planetarization of Consciousness.
Uh-huh, yeah, I know, right? Dude
Yeah,
was
but
awesome.
kind of the reverse,
Yeah,
actually. Like planetarization of your brain, of your consciousness, rather than us consciousizing the earth,
right,
becoming
exactly.
conscious by the earth.
It's
Yeah.
I'm discovering with humility that the way that humans think we have to bring or help other species come to consciousness or the earth, it's the reverse. We're the youngest of the brothers and sisters of this earth. But when my first experience in Wyoming, it was the last day of this 4 day retreat, 5 day retreat, and they kept sending us out on the land to just open ourselves up to messages that we're receiving from nature. And it's coming up again. Like I went out on the trail and I was no more than 10 feet in, and I just literally, my body just dropped and I just started wailing. Like I was so sad about having to go back, to have to leave.
Mm.
The purity and the joyful easefulness of being out in nature for so many days in a row, no computers, no nothing. And the thought of having to leave, it was like feeling like I had to leave my mother again. Like I just
Yeah.
found my mother and now I had to leave her again. And of course, I didn't really have to leave her again. I could have cultivated but it was this real devastation, you could say.
Yeah. Abandonment.
Yeah, of how I had abandoned myself. We have abandoned ourselves. Nature has never abandoned us. And so
Right.
it just, so much of my journey for the last 15 years or so has been in a cyclical way, in a spiral way, because that's the way nature works, right? It's not a linear progression. I, according to my level of safety and ability to integrate these little awakenings, they came here and there one at a time. It would have been too much. It would have been cruel, and nature isn't cruel. My need to seek peak experiences is a way of being cruel to myself rather than softening and surrendering to what's already wanting to
Mm.
remind us that it's here. But it took as long as it took, and I don't have any regrets for the way things happened. It happened
Hmm.
according to my natural timing. And
Mm.
I have a deep, deep respect for the way we are innately wired through our instinctual wisdom for the natural cycles of life, for the natural rising and setting of the stars, the sun, the moon, the planets. It's all this cycle. They seemingly disappear, but they always return, even though they return in different places and
Hey,
different
do you
relationships.
know how many days old you are?
No.
I realized I don't even know. I heard Leon Russell talk about, I was listening to this Leon Russell song and he said, how many days since I was born or something like that? And I was like, man, that's a really good question. I have no idea. You know how many? I looked it up. Just yesterday, I had my 21,000 day birthday. Can
Wow.
you believe that shit?
Wow.
Wow, I know, right? I was like,
That's
oh my God. And if you think about like that rhythm of day and night, right? Like 21,000 repetitions of that basic rhythm. That's why eclipses are so powerful because that's the
mhm.
basic rhythm of life. And you know what? I realized this for the first time, like fully realized that I was reading Bruce Schofield's book. I think it's called, I have it somewhere. his most recent book, the shit, what's it called? The Power of Astrology or something. I'm sorry, I'm killing it, but um, anyway, Scofield's most recent book, you can find it. He's talking about the diurnal cycle and how every single being on this earth, well, 99.9%, there's a few bacteria that live at the bottom of the ocean that don't qualify under this. But everything else has an internal clock to match the cycle of, they've internalized that basic cycle of light and dark. They
Yep.
have what we call the diurnal cycle embedded in their being. And even if you put a human in a cave without any light, they will still basically get up, wake up on that 24-hour cycle.
Mm.
It's in us. It's part of us,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And that's just, and to think like, for instance, I mean, what civilization has been around how, what, a few thousand years, right? Do you know how many hundreds of thousands of years that we were just living in nature? And we weren't, and even if you want to go back to just like the cave paintings and stuff, it's been a long freaking time, man. And so when you think about it, like that part of us, that instinctual self or the indigenous self, that's really the vast majority of our being in terms
Hmm.
of, it's kind of like
Yeah.
that iceberg theory of consciousness that the psychology people came up with, where, hey, you're conscious of about this much, but there's a whole lot more under there. I think it's the same thing, man,
Yeah. And that feels to me like why trauma has become like a runaway train for us is because trauma is, I'm just generalizing here, but it's the lack of adaptability. It's the lack of an ability to adapt to an environmental stressor, you could say. And
Mm,
that's what the instincts are all about. That's what nature does beautifully. They're always adapting and they're always supporting the intelligence of the other species, right?
mm,
So predator is always going to have to get smarter than its prey. The prey then therefore is always going to have to outsmart the predator. It's the way nature remains intelligent and adaptable. And
mm,
because we've become so fixated and isolated and self-identified, that we still are always connected to the web of life. It's just that we've contorted the connections to suit our
mm,
own agendas. And the more we get back to nature, the more resilient we become. And the more that trauma just sort of can unravel itself in its own timing because we become more relaxed into this greater belonging that's before the human. And you and I had this conversation about that the other day, and I said something around we can't look to humans anymore to get us out of the mess of being human. We have to go back, at least in my humble experience, personally, from my own journey, I'm like, oh wow, there's a greater intelligence inherent in nature that I am a part of, and I'm not the only thing. And I'm not the center of it. I am one aspect of it. So the more I can really sink into that strata of, I also call it the pan-conscious, the
mm,
part of me that is interwoven with the web of all sentient life, then I feel rerouted in an intelligence and a nurturance and a generosity and a cross communication network of other species, which
yeah.
makes me more resilient and adaptable. And I'm getting information almost like this from how other species have adapted. It's like it becomes this sort of like, it's like the quantum. The quantum mycelium network of our instinctual nature
Hmm.
is what completes us as a human being that we've gotten that indigenous people know. They've remembered, and then we've tried very hard, and
I heard a
colonized
story
societies.
about this guy that was in Africa and he was talking to the indigenous people there and they were asking him they started talking about talking to the stars and
Yeah,
he was, he wasn't questioning them, but he was just politely not, and they realized like, You don't talk to the stars?" And he's
yeah,
like,
Lawrence Van der Post.
"Mm-mm."
Yeah.
And they were horrified. They were like, how can you put one foot in front of the other if you don't talk to the stars, bro?
Yeah.
You know, that yeah, but to go back to what you were saying about trauma, that's instinctively when I lost my brother, I was only about 24 and he was 18. And I mean, I just I didn't have any, it really just the shock and the yeah, I had no words, man. I didn't really have anything to say to anybody. I didn't really want, and what I did is I went out and it was fortunately, I had the spring and the summer
Mm.
ahead of me and I just spent a lot of time laying on the ground under the trees and I would literally spend an entire day under a particular tree and
Mm.
watch the light as it changed over the course of a day, like those time
Wow.
lapse things that you can
Yeah.
see. I did that. And after by fall, I was sort of somewhere along the lines in the summer, there was one human being, my sister's friend. My sister's older than me, and so one of her friends would stop and check in on me. She'd make me go out to lunch with her. What make me? I mean, this girl was beautiful. I
Mm.
wasn't that I wasn't
It's
I
hard to
wasn't
go.
that traumatized that I wasn't going to go out to lunch with a beautiful girl. And she just kind of kept me um, from just being completely feral, I guess. But that's what healed me, actually. That's what got the process going anyway, is like just being literally laying on the ground, hanging out with the trees, walking through the fields that he and I had grown up in,
Yeah.
And and to this day, when I dream about my brothers, that movie, A River Runs Through It?
Yeah.
It was written by a guy named Norman McLean, Robert Redford, who recently passed, rest his soul. He was the narrator, and he talks about, the bonding that the brothers had through fishing and the metaphor of the river, and yeah, that up to this day, when I dream about my brothers, I think, I see us in a stream playing and maybe not fishing, but, looking at the rocks or whatever kids do when they're in water.
Hmm.
And yeah, that was, and to this day, like, just, I was telling you just the other day, yeah, I've been going out and sitting under a tree.
Hmm.
And I think there's a reason why Buddha did that.
Yeah.
You know?
No shit, Gary. Exactly. You became enlightened under a tree. Uh-huh.
Because
Uh-huh.
trees are amazing, man. I mean, they live longer than us,
Yes, absolutely.
you
And
know,
and minerals, rock, stone, even longer. Yep.
and
Absolutely.
they're a community. They're a true community. They're all interconnected by their roots, and
Hmm.
even between that, you've got the mycelium and all that. And yeah, the it's interesting too. Like I realized when I get overstimulated mentally, I crave the quiet that I find in the woods, in nature. Just like I remember going out, especially when I lived in North Carolina, and I would go out on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and there were wilderness. I mean, there was literally like some areas where there was wilderness on all sides. Like this is way back in there, and you could just be there, and the only thing you would hear is just the wind going through the trees.
Hmm.
That's it. That's the only sound you would hear.
Hmm.
And there's something about that quiet that's just really like, it's like a balm. So
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe why but I only know that there's something in it that feels really, really soothing and peaceful and healing.
And would you also say, Gary, but it's also there's a fullness in the silence. It's
Oh
like a
yeah.
rich,
Oh
rich fullness
yeah. Yeah.
in the silence
Yeah,
too.
there's a it's like it's it's quiet and yet you feel that you're because it's quiet, you can feel the expansiveness of everything. Like it that the quiet like kind of opens you up to everything, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I think why stargazing always appealed to me. You know, when I met Adam at Hindsight in, well, I guess it was tw 2007, and I mean, we were sitting on the back porch and it was it's again, it's like kids, you know. I was mouthing off in class and then he's going, "Hey, hey, you know, I heard you say like, come here, man, we got to talk because well, you were smart enough to the teacher, you know, you said something that anyway, he shared with me about the Venus cycle and I was like, "Man, I got to see this, you know, I got to experience it." And when I started doing that, I started to get back into that feeling of expansiveness that comes with. I mean, my God, you know, I would be on top of a mountain, you know, I was in the middle of Asheville actually, but I would hike up to what's called Bowcatcher Mountain. I think they called it that because that's where the couples would go on a stroll after dinner or whatever. So Bowcatcher, that's where the girls caught their men, apparently.
Uh, oh, Bo, B-E-A.
Bowcatcher,
Okay.
yeah.
Mhm. Nice. Yeah.
But I was up there stargazing and that feeling of expansiveness and connection with everything, you know, I just could instinctively, I could feel like I was recharged through that experience, you
Mhm.
know, and it very quickly became apparent to me like this is different than reading charts, you know,
Mhm.
like I mean, I love being a counselor, I love serving people, and I love reading charts. But I cannot read more than anymore. I try only to do one a day or one. I try to do one at most one a day and space them apart. I only have maybe I only do like 3 or 4 readings in a week anymore because but I knew even back then like two a day was enough
Max, yeah.
because it's exhausting actually. I don't know if people realize that like holding space for another if you really feel it, you
Hmm.
know. And I mean, you know, being the ch adult child of an alcoholic, forces you to be very emotionally aware. You have to be because you have to know when the SH is going to hit the fan.
Yep.
And, and so, you know, when I'm sitting with someone, I'm very aware of everything they're saying and a lot more, you know, because you can read body language and all that. And I mean, it's a lot.
Hmm.
And so I just realized like, wow, this stargazing is kind of like the antidote to that. That this is how I'm going to not get burned out because I mean, I had a career in mental health that was fairly short and I thought at the time I thought, you know, it wasn't the kids that burned me out, it was the system, you know, dealing. And that's I still think that's true. But as I got, you know, more used to dealing, you know, working with adults, I realized like, man, it's just like all this emotional stuff. It's it's difficult to hold all that. It's a
Hmm.
lot. And it's like you said, getting back in touch with the earth, there's something like that grounds that kind of helps you to um, release that and it's not just that you're letting that go, you're also getting filled back up with
Yeah, that's the
energy.
thing.
And I
That's it.
realized like this is the only way that my astrology career, if I'm going to be reading charts as a counselor, like you could do, I don't know, like you know, you could do, there's certain kind of readings that you could just rattle them off and it wouldn't necessarily wear you out. But the kind of readings I was doing the only way this is sustainable is if I make sure to have this sky practice to balance it.
Yeah.
Like I figured that out like this basically saved my life as an astrologer. Um,
And
and
how you brought us, people to sky gazing is also, it feels, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's similar to me wanting to bring people to horses in that it's like I want to be less the middle person and bring people into more direct engagement with what we're all going for, which is for me, oh, well, maybe we're not, we're all going for what I am, which is greater embodiment, greater joy of living in a body. What does it mean to be alive? Not mean as in like excessive meaning making, because I feel like that's part of what's isolated us. We prize meaning over experience. And so the more we can bring people into the realm of direct experience, the more they're learning themselves directly from the source, whether it be the stars or an ambassador for nature like horses, which are they really want to be. So it's like I keep getting humbled too. Oh wow. I have something to bring, of course, with my astrology, just like you do. And that's part of it. And situating people in an environment where there are envoys of nature that are not only wanting to, but willing to engage and support humans to bring out the best of themselves, the most full, the most congruent parts of
Mm.
themselves. That's what I'm, pardon the pun, chomping at the bit to get people in those types of environments, right? Because it also helps us get just strictly out of our heads. We're so, I'm not, it doesn't mean that much. I mean, I don't want to just give people information about themselves anymore. I long to connect people with their own wisdom. How do they relate to the planets themselves within their own body?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
very
mean, it's kind of like
non-linear as it is
what's
linear.
that
Yeah.
what's that Beatles song? I'd love to turn
You
you
on. Yes.
on. Yeah, it was like, man, this really turns me on. I feel alive. I want to share that experience of aliveness with people, and so if we use a different word instead of like, what does it mean to be alive? What is the purpose of being alive? To be alive.
Be alive, right?
Like
Maybe it's
to
just
be.
that. Yeah.
Yes, that dude, that's it.
Right.
The purpose
Creation
of
knowing
being alive
itself.
is to be alive
Yes,
and
yes,
and feel that aliveness and like you said, the joy of being alive, of having the gift of life flowing through you and
yes.
and to be part of a community of beings sharing in that feeling of being alive.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's
Has no good joy in my experience.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I had my share of psychedelic experiences, but I have to tell you, and I put that down a pretty long time ago. I just didn't need it anymore. But um, eh, slowly over time, what I've started to realize is that being out there with the stars is as much of a ritual
Mhm,
and as much of a consciousness altering experience as any, you know, and I never did ayahuasca or anything like that. It was mainly mushrooms and whatever.
mhm.
But yeah, I started to realize like I'm pretty sure this because gosh, I mean, I got, Aries dives in head first. When after Adam shared that with me, man, I was by 2010, I was like literally, okay, now I need a camera to document this because if I show people, maybe they'll get out there. And and so I was all in with it by 2010. So that's been 15 years I've been like really dedicated to making this an integral part of who I am, and I began to realize I'm pretty sure like something like this has changed you. Like you like and I started to realize it was something that hit me. I had John Michael Greer on my podcast at one point talking about, he wrote a book about Pluto. And one of the things that which I think is really astute, he's a really cool guy. I really enjoy talking to him. He's like, okay, so when we have an outer planet, one of the ways that we look at, the meaning of it is to look at the discovery chart. But he goes, let's go back to the original discovery of the five wandering stars. We forget about that, right? Like the sun and the moon are obvious, and the stars as like constellations, those are probably have relatively always been there. But there's these other ones, the wandering stars that go back and forth. Um, we didn't really know what to do with those. And the whole point of structuring, the Mesopotamian civilization was structured in such a way to have a priest class, a priestly caste that went up the ziggurat and did the observations every day to figure out, hey, what the hell is going on up there anyways? What are these wandering stars doing? And so when you think about it, by going out and observing the movements of the wandering stars, we are essentially going back to the very beginning, not just of our art, but of civilization itself. And that what that means is the interface between the indigenous self and the modern self is there. And the modern self starts with systematic stargazing,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost like basically time travel in a way,
Mm-hmm.
in one way of thinking about it, but it's actually more than that because I swear to you, when I'm out now, it's not always, it's not every time. I mean, I have to be honest about that, but it's often enough when I'm out, just, sometimes if I go out to see a particular star rise or a particular planet or whatever, I have to remind myself, hey, stick around to see the sunrise, bro. Like, that's pretty amazing too.
Yeah, right, right.
And I mean, there's been times and the whole thing of like, and even the whole thing of like the bird song and the animals coming to life and the whole process of the world waking up.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time some kind of worldly shit was trying to intrude, like, oh, you have to remember to do this or that or whatever chore, right? And so the thought came to my mind, oh, fuck, what day is it anyway? And there's this wonderful, irreverent part of myself answered, would you shut up? It's the first day,
Yeah, I love that.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
It's the first day, bro. Like, be still. And then I started to think about like, It's it could be. Like for all I know, here I am. This is the first day that a tomb rose from the silt of the Nile and lit you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes,
and as
exactly.
soon as that possibility came into my awareness, that was like what I'm trying to explain is like that was as consciousness raising, as consciousness expanding as anything I've ever experienced with or without the aid of psychedelics.
That's exactly, you're experiencing basically the collapse of time, linear time.
Yeah.
It's literally every moment is the moment of creation, like you said beautifully.
Yes.
And it's literally in the visual seeing the planets that have been there since the beginning of time for as a human being at least, and that connecting with the
Long
same
before the
wandering
beginning of
stuff.
time as
Yeah.
a human being. Yeah.
So it's like it's that constant moment of recreation. It breaks down any idea of a chronological or linear time, which is there too for humans as long as we need it. And
I
the
mean, it
reality of
helps.
nature is it doesn't see time in a linear way. And one of the things, Garrett, you're bringing up, which is wonderful, um, in this recent retreat that I was at in Paso Robles, hosted by Warwick Schiller, who is one of the preeminent horsemen in the industry, who had his own epiphany a number of years ago around. He's this kind of like Aussie guy who, did a lot of, show stuff with horses
Mm,
um, and had his own kind of awareness around like really relating with the horse as a partner, like the
hmm
epiphany of not just getting the horse to do what we want it to do, but how do we ask the horse? How do we even know that it wants to do? And how
mm.
do we become more reciprocal in our relationships?
How do
And
we share in the joy of being alive with the horse?
yes.
Yeah.
And so he has this thing that he's been doing every year called a summit. And this year it was a lot more intimate. It was more like a retreat. And he had some people who were speaking. It was very, very low key. There wasn't a lot of like hierarchy around, oh, the teachers are better. It was super just like
That's refreshing.
Aquarian. But one of the women who was there, her name is Emily Kasdotter. I don't know how it's Cagsdotter. She's a woman from Sweden who I aspire to be when I grow up. And I say that because she is so remarkable for being unremarkable and natural. And
Mm,
the joy of just being her is just so evident. It's not manufactured, it's not an energetic joy. It's like a situated in that pan consciousness in just a, humble, humble way. And to hear her speak about, and she's been, you could say, an interspecies communicator for over 30 years now,
mm,
minerals, plants. She's had incredible dreams of like going to find a rock in New Zealand that the Maori elders helped her find. And she had a dream about going to Jordan, and she's communicated with the Hashemite horses, which is, these are the horses that have been in a family for hundreds of years. Directly, these are the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. And these Hashemite horses, or you could say enlightened beings that help support what she calls the way of compassion. So
mm,
this woman is like the real deal. And to hear her speak about what she feels in her own humble way, what the horses and all of nature are supporting us to do is exactly what we were talking about. To be alive in this form. Like,
mm,
and the way she described certain things at the retreat hit me right in my heart and my gut because they were mirroring experiences that I had had the prior weekend at an on-site for this program that I'm in to work for humans to work with horses together in a, it's not so much therapy, it's more coaching, but there is therapeutic stuff that happens within that environment for
mm,
sure.
mm,
But I felt such an affinity with what she was saying more than anybody else I'd ever met in terms of my burgeoning experience with horses and nature and what they're inviting us to, and similar to what she experiences. And it felt so, I didn't need the validation, but it felt validating in terms of, okay, it's nice to be mirrored, that there's a reciprocity here. There's somebody who's feeling, not to validate it like our way is right, but it just was like, oh, it's nice to feel like a community gathering. Like I'm starting to really find people that I can learn from, basically to learn to unlearn even more, to become more of an open
mm,
vessel, to remember the connection through life. And she speaks about, and I highly recommend anybody just doing a search for her and listening to the multiple podcasts that she's done. But when people say that animals are not sentient the way we are, or that they can't be enlightened the way we are, she says, I don't know, but I posit that maybe they just never left that state. Maybe there's no journey for them to return to because they never left the creation. And when you think about Genesis, right? The Garden of Eden, it was humans that chose to leave the garden, not all the other beings there, right? So if we
That's
start
right.
from the premise that maybe they're already there, and it's us who are the younger brothers and sisters that are just kind of the ones coming back into, we've had the journey of separation to experience the joy of returning. That's something as well. It's like we don't
Mm,
have to see it as a negative. We could see it as we've forgotten who we were and where we come from so that we can experience the joy of being recreated every moment. coming back to you. Yeah.
Prodigal child.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
There was something you were sharing with me about the nature of horses and that their ability to regulate their nervous system being older than ours and their ability to regulate. And I'll let you say some more about that, but there's another thing that I don't want to forget to mention to you that I was thinking about after you shared that with me. That, even though we tend to think of humans as predators and horses as prey, and so it's a curious, like, how the hell did we ever manage to get along?
Mhm.
Actually, we're as monkeys, as apes, we're a group species too.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so actually, and I started to think about it, like all the animals that we domesticated, dogs, very social animals, cattle, horses, and I was like, wow, I guess it's easy to forget, like we're I don't know, social animals or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
too,
Yeah. Exactly.
so I'll let
Yeah.
you say more about the nervous system because there's a lot of talk about trauma these days,
Mhm.
in different way, ancestral healing and whatever. And man, I still think for me, nature has always been my greatest healer. And there's a lot of talk about like regulation of, emotional regulation and nervous system regulation.
Mhm.
And so maybe you want to talk a bit about that and how the
Yeah.
horses are helping.
Yes. Well, all of nature, including us, has an innate capacity to heal, to regenerate itself. I mean, we see that in nature all the time. And so nature has shown over and over and over again that given space and time, it knows how to heal itself. It knows how to make something new from seemingly disparate or invasive things, right? One of the examples I've used quite a bit was Chernobyl, right? The Chernobyl nuclear disaster that happened when you and I were growing up, right?
Yeah.
And everybody fled and left for good reason. But people returning now have noticed that it's thriving. It's a thriving ecosystem because humans weren't intervening, because nature knows how to regenerate. Like there are even mushrooms that have been used in for oil spills in the Amazon jungle that are remediation because they know how to soak up the petrochemicals.
Mm,
Like nature has already within it the antidote. And so humans in our own hubris and arrogance and because of our separateness, we think we need to fix nature. But maybe it's that or we need to fix ourselves, but maybe it's more about softening, being humble to allow our natural capacity to self-heal and self-regulate come
mm,
online, and with the support of nature, with the support of horses, with the support of like a nervous system that can re-regulate. And horses experience trauma, but guess what? They experience it from humans.
mm.
Nature does not
Yeah.
experience trauma other than through humans inflicting trauma.
Mm,
And so, and yet, even so, like horses that are taken in who have been severely traumatized, like the place that I volunteer at once a week, which is a horse rescue, given the right environments, provided safety, provided shelter, provided food, provided the ability to relate with others of their kind and kindness from humans, over and over and over again, it's demonstrated that these horses, I mean, maybe there are some real severe cases where horses have been really, really shut down. But those are fewer and farther between than the horses that are resilient. It just shows not because they're any more special than we are, but they're not in their own way.
yeah.
They're not making meaning of what's happening. They're not inserting anything that's not necessary. It's just the time and the space and having a safe environment. The healing happens on its own. That's just how nature
And I love
works.
what you do with your body right there because the animals literally, you see a dog
Shape.
what's the first thing they do? Ah, they just, and when you do that, what do you feel? Like I can feel right now, like there's this, something
Exactly.
is lighter and
It's not staying sticking. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. There's you know there's an interesting kind of Sagittarius being that sign of the zodiac that's essentially a symbiotic creature, like a
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a molding of human and horse,
Hmm.
and the evolution of humans really took and with the archer being about the faraway horizon.
Yeah.
There's a lot right there in that symbol because horses, I mean, without a horse, you can't, over even ground, you might be able to cover what, about 40 miles or so under, I mean, horses open up so much more ability to travel and then of course, they can help us with, because they're a lot bigger than us, they can help us with moving things and all that stuff. And so that partnership of humans and horses was really fundamental to
Hmm.
having any kind of society, even if it's like, sort of like nomadic hunter-gatherer.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and that I was reading somewhere about like the way that they are, where they sort of have this because they're herd animals and because of their, you know, if you think about like the grass, right? It comes up right to their sides, but their heads above the grass. So their feet are like in the grass and the grass is like brushing their sides. And so they have this like peripheral awareness of they can feel, and then they're connected with their herd members and that connection of feeling goes
Hmm.
out. So it's like they're just like they have this awareness of this
Totally.
spatial awareness. And their eyes are on the sides of their head, you
Mhm.
know, whereas humans, our eyes are in the front of our heads and we're like, and so it's kind of an interesting partnership in that way too, where they have this sort of bodily and horizontal awareness, whereas we're more linear, I guess, in a
Great.
way.
Gary. Yes.
And that combination between the two, it's like, they sort of feel it's like what do you call them? It's like a marriage of opposites. It's like,
Yeah.
they fill in where we have a weakness and we fill in something that they don't naturally have.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's just amazing when you think about like where would we be even without horses, you know?
I
Um,
love what you're pointing out because it's just so it's like the centaur model or in Chiron, which we can speak about in a minute, is like you just said, like how do these two things that seem to be at odds coexist or work together? And it's because it's like it reconciles the false binary that we've become entranced by.
mm,
This, again, like we talked about a little bit earlier, the predator and the prey, there's a natural order to things that our meaning making as humans, again, I don't mean to make meaning making bad. It's just it becomes toxic if it's imbalanced by experience. If it
mhm.
becomes imbalanced by not having enough experience to keep checking on the belief system. Is the belief system still true? Is it still true? Or has it just become codified and stuck in here? So, if you consider that, at times when the predator is not hunting, it's not hungry, prey and predator animals go to the
They can
same
sit right there
level.
next to each other and they're just chilling. There's no,
Exactly, exactly. That
yep,
I've got no beef on you just because you're a different, you know what I mean? It's like we forget that, and that's why people who observe nature for long enough see these things that breaks this sort of, trance of binary, right, wrong, good, bad, predator, prey, perpetrator, victim. It becomes
right.
less solid. And that's scary because we like our solid thing. And the thing about, I won't go into it, but I had an experience directly with a horse, being a predator and being with an animal that is a prey animal. And it was one of the most deeply healing things for me to witness me going through a process of acknowledging my predatorness and how I'd been specializing the horse and not and devaluing myself, making myself wrong about that in the presence of a horse, and what that unwound for me, and watching the horse respond positively to me
Mm.
because I was being congruent, Gary, because
Hmm.
I was being authentic.
Yes, that's who you
Wasn't
are.
trying
You're
to
a
be something
predator.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
And that horse just, I walked away and the horse would follow me because the horse was like, I want to be with this person who's congruent. I feel safe with
Mm.
this predator.
Hmm.
Way
That
it was
knows it's a predator. Yeah.
that knows where it stands. It's not trying to be something else. So
Mm.
this thing about Chiron that's been really, Chiron means a lot of different things. And this is not negating all of the other things that Chiron can mean, but in my own experience of coming back into what I'm calling more my indigenous self, which is the indigenous is not just the instinctual nature, it's the threading of all of our intelligences, instinct, intuition, and intellect. To me, that makes
Mm.
indigenous human, where we're not saying no to any parts of us, we're integrating all of them. But
Mm.
my instinctual, as I get more into my instinctual to develop my indigenous humanness, Chiron to me represents where we have separated ourselves from nature, from our instincts.
That's the wound.
That's the wound. That's the Garden of Eden, man. That's
Mm.
where did we suddenly think we were better than? And again, it was a grand experiment. I'm not saying this in a blaming way. We all somehow, some way along the line, through some incarnation, bought into the grand play that we are separate. We wanted to see what it was like for a while. And now we recognized, oh, well, there were some good things that came from that and not some not so good things from that. Where can we
Probably
humble ourselves
wouldn't have
back?
landed on the moon without it, but you know.
Yeah, and yeah, but there's just a lot, it's that prodigal son thing that keeps coming back. And I don't consider myself a particularly religious person, but I grew up Catholic and I know the story. And there have been times where I've been in a session with somebody or I've been teaching and that story comes back and I'm like, wow, it's coming back because there's perennial truth in it. And it's just it's
Yeah.
a it's a metaphor for something.
Yeah, you don't have to be a Christian to see the truth in that story. I mean, the
No.
prodigal child and what does the parent do? It just
Welcomes back with open
welcome
arms.
home.
That's nature.
Let's have a party.
That's God, goddess, whatever you want to call it, universe. Welcome home.
Yeah.
Welcome home. You have the humility to come back home, not because not defeated, but recognizing, oh, I'm not separate. I was this, and all of my learning and my experiences are coming back to bring value to the whole again.
Mm, mm,
It's another way of saying the hero's journey, but
mm.
it's never for just us ourselves, and that's the herd
Right.
consciousness too. And that's the thing Emily speaks to that really resonates. But she's like she has spoken on behalf of humans who want to know who the lead of the herd is, the lead horse. And Emily says every time she asks the herd, they come back with speaking of the gifts and the blessings of each individual horse and what they're good at. And she'll say, well, no, who's the leader? And the horses will consistently come back with that. And the third time she asked, they didn't say anything because they don't see leadership. They don't see hierarchy the way we do. Each horse has a gift. There's a scout, there's a protector, there's the one who's the wisdom keeper, there's the one who's the caregiver. And she even said something that really was interesting. She's like, there's always the horse in the herd that everybody can move, meaning, they're always challenging one another through trying to move each other with energy.
Mm,
But what if the one who everyone can move is the only one that can move the one that no one can move?
mm.
So what we call leadership, every horse is going to be the one stepping up to the plate in a certain
What
leadership
their
role
trade
based
is
on what's
needed.
necessary,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
that's another thing to remember about monkeys. Like we have this weird thing with verticality and like we're always trying to get up on somebody. I mean, verticality means we're safe.
yeah,
right? But it also means we have power.
and we're alone.
Right.
That's where isolation can begin. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have something cooking that sounds really exciting
Do.
that I wanted to share with people.
Um, yeah. One of the things, as I alluded to before, is the more I learn from nature, specifically horses right now, whether it stays horses or not, I'm open. And as you alluded to before, I also said so I was so enthusiastic about going to Africa and the tracking thing. And that's Andrea Michelle like leaping before she can
I
walk.
was ready. I was like, sign me up,
Yeah,
man. I'm there.
I
I'm
know.
there. You show me the way.
My enthusiasm for this rediscovery of this pan consciousness was not grounded as enough at the time. But the core principle or the core devotion or longing was still there.
Mm,
It's just what came to me was like, oh, horses are, you don't have to travel to Africa, but although I do want to do that at some point. Horses are right here, and horses are going to provide the same type of relationship. More people can relate to horses. Even, and you don't even have to be like them or know if there's no riding at all involved in the way that I'm interacting with horses. But as I'm discovering, there is something about being in the field of beings that are volunteering to be ambassadors for nature for us, to be the intermediaries because of our thousands of year old relationship with horses, as you were saying before.
mm,
We have a genetic memory, whether we have ever grown up with horses or not, there is in the collective consciousness or unconsciousness, there is a bond already that exists between humans and horses.
yeah.
And one of the things that I want to do is just because I keep learning from it, always I'm humbling myself to horses. Um, Not less than, but humbling meaning where am I available in me to continue to stay open, an open school of learning in me from what the horses are showing me,
Mm,
so that I can be a real relative to them, to
mm,
nature again. So I want to provide environments for people to learn about astrology is kind of the medium, and Chiron specifically, but also Ceres, Demeter, because of
mm,
her capacity. She's one of the great initiators, in addition to Chiron, and she's the great mother of the care. She represents Earth, right? She's the great Earth Mother and the one
mm,
who gave us the Eleusinian mysteries, the
mm,
rites of how to come back into the natural cycle of life, how to
mm,
cut through the illusion of time to come back to the origin over and over again, like you beautifully spoke to about the
mm.
sky viewing experience. And so this retreat in Santa Fe, it's called the Centaur as Mentor. And it's Santa Fe in and of itself is just, it's called the land of enchantment for good reason. And I find it
Sky there, the light.
in
Ooh,
the sky, and it's just, and the place where we're going to be is this grounded magic. It's hard to describe, but you have to experience it. And the
it's
horse,
real. I can attest. And I'm
it's
not
real.
woo.
No, I know, right? It's the most practical thing, right? It's like magic. We don't have to get woo. It's just, it's the nature of what we are. And so with a herd of horses and two donkeys and a bunch of cats and dogs, we're going to be immersed 3 days at this place called
Nice.
Buffalo Spirit Ranch. And we're going to have some morning astrology where we're going to meet Chiron in a new way, maybe with Ceres and also the layers of the deacons that I speak to that we spoke about already about the pan consciousness and all the aspects of the chart in our chart that support us in where are the most direct places that we are wired to return to our pan consciousness. What are the most
Mm,
direct routes? So that's going to be the teachings in the morning, and then in the afternoon we're going to have some time with the herd with facilitators, either Kelly Wendorf, who runs Buffalo Spirit Ranch, or Thunder Bear Yates, who is her director of operations who is a Pueblo um, wisdom keeper for his tribe. And he's
Mm,
going to share the history of the Pueblo nations and their relationship with horses and how integral their relationship is with Horse Nation.
mm.
Um, it's all going to be on the ground. You don't even have to get into the arena. You can stand on the outside and watch. Being horses' fields are so large. Their electromagnetic fields of their hearts is 5 times that of a human. But
Mm,
being in the space of a regulated nervous system supports us to come back into our natural indigenous rhythm,
mm,
slow down enough to come into a place of greater homeostasis and experience that directly. So there's
mm.
going to be teachings for our minds, but there are also going to be somewhat transmissions. And then there's going to be just the space of being with horses and what is it like to interact with them safely on the ground, only to the extent that you want to. And again, you can just witness, and there's so much happening, even just witnessing. So much happening, and we don't
Witnessing's
even know.
important. Yeah.
Right.
Hanging with
Exactly.
the herd.
Yep. And this is going to be hanging with the herd. Exactly. And it's going to be over the equinox, March equinox weekend in 2026.
Fantastic. I love it. It sounds so cool. I'm really happy that um your path keeps unfolding and it's beautiful to see and I just wanted to share that with everybody because I'm realizing like more and more even though I may not speak, I probably don't speak about it enough, but that's really like my background has always
Mhm.
been
Mhm.
as kind of a nature boy who, became an astrologer.
Yeah.
So it's been
I
great talking to you about all of this. I feel like we could probably have this conversation like once a month and it would
I
always do.
know. I love it. I love speaking to you, Gary, because you do keep it real. And it's not always easy to keep it real in a in an environment that it's uncomfortable with being real sometimes. So
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't know any other way to be. And so the what now that doesn't no not everybody's always comfortable with that. And I've had to, that's part of the pain of me is
mhm,
that, I just I don't really know any other way to be. And
mhm,
sometimes people aren't ready to hear whatever, you have to say and or they misinterpret it. And that's part of the trip of keeping it real.
yeah. No, I love that. And that's what
Yeah.
horses in nature, one more thing that brings up for me is that I wanted to share is I don't, I'm not communicating with horses all the time, like one would imagine an animal communicator, but every now and again I get things from, you could say the field, the intelligent
I
field of
think you
horses.
can't help but, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I received once was based on something that was happening unconsciously with me was I was watching somebody interacting with a horse and I've stopped I was devouring a lot of information about horses and human horse relationship at first. And then I realized that's nice, but maybe that wasn't really helpful because it might be getting in the way of what is my unique relationship with the horse. And again, that speaks to, learning before experience is not necessarily great. That's where we get caught up. So I dialed it back, but I was, early on in my work with horses, I was witnessing somebody operating or working with a horse, and I was like, well, that's not necessarily kind, or they're not really paying attention to the horse the way that um, I think that the horse really wants them to. And then
Mm.
again, it wasn't even a voice; it was just more like an awareness, gentle awareness that came in for me. That was you could, again, the voice of the horse wisdom saying, we choose to work with humans where they're at. Every individual where they're at. It is not for humans to be an ambassador for us to say how people should interact or not with horses. And that
Wow.
was very humbling because I was like, again, there's the subtle hubris of being human. Somehow we are, I mean, we are protectors of nature, but not, but we have to be careful that we're not assuming we know better than nature. We have to recognize where we are not still. It's like protecting nature once we are really back in connection with it is a whole other matter that the indigenous people what we call the indigenous folks really remember. But I was noticing where there was a subtlety of, wow, I know better and I have to say something. And the horses were just gently like, let us take
Nah,
care of it.
yeah.
Just, we've got
We
it
got
handled.
it, bro. Yeah.
So,
It's really fascinating because there's what, for me, I don't know why, there's certain things that just stick with me. And one of the things that really stuck with me from my early counseling training was this, it's an aphorism, start where the client is.
yeah.
That's what the horse is telling you. We
Uh-huh.
meet people where they are, bro. Like
Yeah.
that's him. That's how
Yeah.
he does it. It's
Yeah.
cool, you know.
Exactly.
But it's something important to remember, I think, when you're interacting with someone and their astrology chart. The chart says a lot of stuff. Maybe it says stuff that the person hasn't experienced yet. Maybe it says stuff the person will never experience.
Right. Right.
But the truth of that person is their experience.
Yes. Right.
And so if you're trying to take something that you see in the chart and tell them they need to experience that just because you see it in the chart, that's ass backwards because what you really need, your job should really be to meet them where they are, which means to open, understand their experience and then go, oh, well, this is where that shows up in the chart. And if I were a person who had that experience and had this chart, this is what I would do. Do you see the
Yes.
difference?
Totally. And that's where
Yeah.
I become more fine-tuned as an astrologer around, not being so quick to, it's like I ask more questions now of people than trying to give answers. And there's a real,
Exactly.
because it's just like, and it's weird. I'm in this flux of like, because people come to me for answers oftentimes. They don't want to be asked questions. I'm not paying you to ask me questions. So I'm in this kind of weird space of like, I'm shifting the way I approach astrology based on what I'm learning from horses. So there's this dynamic of I'm unlearning and learning just with everybody else. And and
Yeah.
I'm as the first person to say, you and the horse before me and you. I'm happy to be, part of the process. And I trust your relationship with the horse and your relationship with you before what I have to say. And if you
Wow.
find value in what I say, great. And I always tell people, because I'm saying what I'm saying doesn't mean you have to buy into it. I know you know that, but take everything I say with a grain of salt and challenge me if that with what I'm
Yeah.
saying, you know, fitting
Yeah.
your experience. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So one more time, the title of the retreat is
The
Centaur is Mentor.
centaur is mentor.
Santa
Yeah.
Fe, March
20th.
26th. March
No, March,
20th, 2026.
yeah, March 20 to 22nd, 2026.
And people can find out more by way
You'll
of
have
you.
you'll have the link. Oh, and you know what,
Yeah.
Gary, which is super interesting? Next year is the year of the horse in the Chinese
Ha ha
zodiac
ha,
too.
of course.
Of course. Of course, the horse. Yes.
Right on. It's been great hanging with you, homie.
Oh, you too, homie.
All
Thank you.
right. Many blessings. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.